Thank you, Sam. It's a pleasure to be here. Human rights, as Gary was saying earlier, it's really at the center of the framework towards which we work, in order to achieve the SDGs. And at the Thomson Reuters Foundation, we use a very unique approach to promote human rights, and our unique approach combines the power of journalism and the power of the law, and it's a very effective one. Why? Because if people don't have basic rights, and the information that they receive is polarizing, is inaccurate, and is hateful, human rights are necessarily at risk. And that is because human rights, as we know, they're not just a charter that lives on a shelf. They are the framework within which our daily actions take place and should take place. And so we raise awareness of human rights issues, from forced labor and human trafficking to women's rights, to climate risks, to data discrimination, to LGBT rights. And we do this globally through a number of interventions. Our news coverage, for example, we cover stories that others don't. We distill complex news issues, articulating the implications for people, for society, and for the environment. We also train journalists to report accurately, fairly, and without bias on human rights issues. We facilitate free legal assistance and research to support frontline human rights organizations. We drive collaboration to advance human rights and influence policy change through partnerships, through working groups, through events, bringing together the media, the legal sector, civil society, governments, academia, and the private sector. Human rights and human dignity are fundamental to our mission, because we believe societies cannot fulfill their potential if people cannot live freely, if they cannot be free, and if they are not accurately informed. And I think this conversation comes at a really interesting time, because we're all really talking about building back better, which is a phrase that has been adopted in 2020 by everyone, from multinational corporations to campaigning politicians to civil society organizations. We all want to build back better, but the question that we're now facing is, how do we go about it? And what does it actually mean in practical terms? And we've seen with this pandemic hitting, the widening gap between the richest and the poorest to historic levels, really reversing all the progress that we made in the past 3 decades. According to the World Bank, extreme poverty has risen for the first time in 20 years, pushing an additional 150 million people into living on less than $2 a day. More than half of those people are actually women and girls. And between March and June, the wealth of US billionaires has increased by 20%. That's $584 billion to be precise. So there's a lot of work to do.